Welcome to JRC Fundamentals of Carp Fishing. In this episode, we're going to be looking at the three key lead arrangements, those three setups that are in popular use, wide circulation in the UK, all across Europe, the applications of lead setup that are used for all carp fishing purposes. We've got the lead clip, we've got the inline lead, and of course we've got the helicopter setup. So we're going to get into the bones of each one of those three setups, look at how to set them up safely, which is absolutely paramount, and then of course when you might choose to use each one of those particular presentations. So guys, to start off with, we are going to look at the common, good old-fashioned lead clip system. Now, a lead clip setup in conjunction with rig tubing is my go-to setup for the majority of venues that I go to. I travel around a lot, I fish a lot of different places. There's nowhere that's going to not admit you for having a tubing setup and a lead clip. You know, you haven't got any of the complications of helicopters or lead core and leaders and so on and so forth. If you want a setup that is very, very simple, super safe, can be used on any fishery and can be used in just about any angling situation, then a lead clip is the one for you. And as I say, I use it an awful lot. If you're going to use it, the best starting point is with anti-tangle tubing. And we've got on here some nice fast sinking JRC tungsten tubing, which really is the bomb, sinks incredibly well. Always remember, if you're not sure, the length of your tubing, in order to do its job of stopping the hook link tangling, the tubing must always be at least 30 mil longer than the hook link. That's absolutely imperative. If you've got a hook link longer than your tubing, then you will get tangles. Typically, the amount of tubing that I use is usually about 14, 18 inches, something like that. And I want enough to give me protection to the main line down in the last couple of foot where the fish is, maybe going through weed or snags, also to protect the fish and obviously to do its number one job, which is to create an anti-tangle system. The tubing plugs into the end of a tail rubber. So these tail rubbers are really nice because you get a very, very small, very narrow, smooth shoulder. What you don't want is a combination of tubing and tail rubber where you have a big step down, a big lip, because that is a potential tangle point. The lead goes on to the arm, and the tail rubber, absolutely vital, wet it before you put it on and only put it on halfway. I do bring in, over the years, I have bought in, I should say, quite a few lead clip rigs, and one even recently, and the tail rubbers are just jammed on all the way up. So it's like that. That is disgraceful, guys. Do not set your lead clips up like that. The fish will have zero chance of getting rid of that lead. In order for the rig to be completely safe, wet it, put it on halfway, and that will suffice. Now, these JRC lead clips have been designed to create a running setup, so the fish picks up the lead, and if it shakes it, the swivel will pop out of the housing and start running on the line. I have to be completely honest, that is not my preferred setup, but these have been designed by some very forward-thinking European guys, and that is a tactic they use a lot over there. For the fishing that I do, it's imperative for me to have a lead clip where the swivel locks inside the housing. So if I've got a fish that's jammed in weed and the lead's jammed like that, if the fish starts pulling and the swivel comes out, then the lead is never going to come off, and you're going to be fixed to a pulley, fulcrum type system where you can pull one way, the fish can pull the other, and the lead is fixed. In order for the lead to come off every time that it hits a snag or hits any weed, it is definitely preferable to have a locking mechanism so the swivel stays inside the housing. When you have the swivel locked inside the housing, you should be able to take hold of the hook link, give it 2 shakes maximum, and that lead should come off every single time. If you are fishing a lake that doesn't have any weed and it's not snaggy, then a lead clip that is set up like this with the JRC clip as a running system could well be the next edge in bite indication. because as that pops out, you are creating a running lead system, which is going to cause the carp a lot more problems, but it's going to give you a lot more indication at the rod end. But I should stress, if you've got weed or snags or both, my preference is to have a system where the swivel locks into that housing and cannot come out. Lead clips tend to be my go-to setup for the majority of carp fishing. They are always my first choice for long range fishing. Very, very safe. I can put a 4-ounce lead on that arm should I need to and cast it as far as I need to get it out. Sometimes with helicopter systems, if you're fishing a drop-off style, I've seen them come off a lot over the years, and I don't think they're particularly reliable. So for me, for my personal preference, a lead on a clip for distance fishing, and it is also my preference for the majority of weed fishing that I do, because it is the best way to ditch a big heavy lead. I know there are, again, as I said, different helicopter systems. We're going to look at those that will drop the lead under certain types of pressure, but for me the most reliable way is to put a lead on a clip, put the tail rubber, just nip it onto the end of the tail of the clip arm itself, and then that will come off every time with a couple of shakes from the fish's head. It's a very, very streamlined, good anti-tangle presentation, and as I said right at the start of this, the lead clip and anti-tangle tubing should be your go-to because it is completely safe when set up correctly. Follow the guidelines that I've just told you, and will be allowed on every fishery around the UK without any problems, and lastly, can be used for any kind of carp angling situation. So don't get into the whole, can I put a wafter on that lead setup or pop up on that? Forget about all that. If you're fishing over a baited area, or whether you're fishing a single bait, a lead clip will do it for you. And whether it's particle fishing, boilie fishing, it doesn't matter. You can present your rig on this without any worries. Set it up safely, set it up properly, and a lead clip and tubing is pretty much the only setup you'll need for your carp fishing. The next setup we're going to look at is the inline lead. The inline lead is a very, very simple setup indeed. Quite often the starter setup for a lot of people. Most people start off using inlines and then end up using other different things, but inlines have definitely got a place still in carp fishing. I think that principally their main key use is if you're fishing solid PVA bags. Now, although a good mate of mine, 𝘁𝗵𝗶𝗀, likes to put a lead clip set up inside a solid bag, it's not really for me. I much prefer the compact unit of an inline lead in a solid bag. So if I'm doing any sort of that fishing, I did some last week, solid bags of boilie, crumb and a bit of pellet, then you, in my opinion, you really can't beat an inline lead. I've got this one set up on a short leadless leader, but you can set them up on tubing. An inline lead set up on tubing with a tail rubber, again, is one of those totally safe setups that you can use on any fishery in the country. The thing that you need to be completely aware of is, and it's absolutely vital, is that the swivel must not jam really, really tight into the nose of that inline. In fact, myself and various others have found that a running inline is actually a lot better, and you can see I've got this set up so the swivel will pull out under very, very, well, no pressure at all. It's just gliding through there. Now, inline leads, like all other leads, come in a variety of different shapes and sizes. I do prefer these flat compact types for putting inside solid bags. Occasionally I might use them for stalking in the edge as well with short braided hook links, but if you just want to box it off in your mind, because we're looking at 3 different lead arrangements, inline leads, solid bags. You know, it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. And you can fish them, as I've got this set up, in a drop-off style. Now, although this isn't a running type arrangement, if you are fishing solid bags or using inlines in the edge or something, and it's weedy, then a drop-off system is very, very important. So you can see that I've got a tail rubber on here. Let's just twist that off there, and you can see that once that you get a good pull from the fish, the swivel pops out of the nose of the lead completely. I have squeezed this swivel. Swivels and different lead manufacturers, they're not always directly compatible. This swivel, I'm not sure, I think that's a JRC one, but it was a little bit tight on this Fox inline lead. So I just squeezed the eye so that it pops in there easily, and then the line comes into that groove, passes round the outside of the lead, and then wet the tail rubber and just nip it onto the end. And as you can see, that's a lovely, streamlined and very safe setup. When the fish pulls from the other end, you can see that straight away the swivel pops out of the lead, and that will drop off should it jam in any weed or a snag or anything. So a couple of different ways of setting up inline leads, but again, a really good tactic for using with solid bags, or if you're just basic boilie fishing, particle fishing, you can't get a more basic and straightforward setup than an inline lead, tail rubber and rig tubing. So always bear that in mind. Again, as I said with the lead clip, it doesn't matter what presentation you're using. It's not affected by whether you're using a wafter or a pop-up. These are just arrangements for getting our rig into position on the lake bed where we need it. It's no more confusing than that. I like to just think of it as inline leads. Yeah, I'm going to use them for solid bags, but lead clip's my main one, and I'll sometimes use helicopters, which we're going to look at next. So if you think inlines are for you, give them a go. But as I said, do please make sure that swivel can pop out easily from the nose if you're using it running with rig tube. And again, if you're going to set it up like this as a drop-off style, make sure the swivel again is nice and loose so that that can pull out free of the lead as soon as it needs to. That's inline leads. The final lead setup we're going to look at is the good old helicopter rig. Now, I think it's a little bit confusing that it's called a helicopter rig, because it's nothing to do with rigs. Just the same as a lead clip and an inline, it's a method of attaching your lead to the line rather than an actual rig, which is usually the part attached to the hook that we try and use to catch a carp. A helicopter rig is any type of lead setup that has the lead on the end of the line. That's the definition of a helicopter rig, and the hook link would be attached to a swivel that would travel and run just behind that lead. Sometimes referred to as a rotary system. It's a very good anti-tangle system, but it is also great for fishing over silt and any kind of leaf litter or debris on the lake bed. The thing that I really like a helicopter rig for is for fishing any kind of stiff hook link. Now, the two lead setups that we've looked at already, the lead clip and certainly the inline lead, do not carry really stiff hook links very well, in my opinion, particularly the inline lead. If you're fishing an inline lead over any kind of softish lake bed, you've only got to get the tip of that nose of that inline lead to go into that sludgy, silty stuff, and your stiff hook link will be bridged up at an atrocious angle. Lead clips, it can happen as well to a lesser degree, but if you do get the lead and the clip housing buried in silt, then again, that can stick up a stiff boom at an awkward angle. So if I am using any kind of stiff boom or stiff hook link, a helicopter is always my number one choice, because the lead lays on the bottom and hook link lays out behind it, nice and unfettered and uncluttered, and it also allows me to go very short on hook links at times should I feel the need to, and very short hook links don't tend to sit or look very nice on a lead clip. I've yet to find a helicopter setup that works really well with anti-tangle tubing. I tend to make mine out of a leader, a braided leader like this contact one here, which is leadless and you can splice it easily, or if allowed, I'll use lead core, which this one is set up on. Again, as I said, tubing and helicopter rigs are a bit like oil and water. They don't tend to work very well together. So if I'm going to be using a helicopter rig, it will be on a short length of splice leader. 3 foot or so is ample. So if any kind of leader is allowed, then a helicopter rig is very often my preference, because I am usually fishing a stiff hook link, quite often a shorter hook link. I don't tend to use helicopter rigs at range, again, because the type of safety mechanism that I favour for lead attachment, which you can see here, which is a good old-fashioned C-clip, I find that, you know, you can't put a 4-ounce lead on one of those and blast it 100 yards. And as I said at the top of this, if I am fishing in a casting situation, then a lead clip will be my preference. But, you know, for fishing in and around weeds, short to middle distance, as we're doing at the moment a helicopter on a short leader with the lead on a little clip like that so it can drop off easily is a very, very good first choice. And the most important thing, I'll save till last, is to make sure that your top bead is always able to come off that little piece of silicone. So I use these little pre-threaded lengths of silicone tube which have a bead already fitted to them. When I splice the leader, I slide these onto the leader so that they sit on there like that. Very, very important, guys, for safety, that your bead can pop off. Now, this is one reason why helicopter rigs are not suitable for hooked on PVA bags or big stringers or anything like that, because that bead should pop off easily. And if you've got any resistance on the cast from a little PVA bag or something like that, then that bead will pop off on the cast. If you find yourself making that tight enough by making a different size bead maybe, or using a different size bead I should say, in order for your bag or stringer not to push the hook link up the leader, then your rig will become unsafe. This bead must be able to come off very, very easily. So we'll give this a wet. And the test that you need to do to make sure that your helicopter rig is safe is just pop the bead onto the end of that silicone like so. Now, any kind of lead setup can only be tested by taking hold of the hook link or the hook link swivel, and if you bounce that, well, I was going to say twice, but even once, that bead has come off that little piece of silicone and the swivel is now running freely on the leader. Always make sure that your attachment knot is very small, compact and tidy. You don't want anything that can stop the bead or the swivel from coming off the end of the leader. One of the reasons why I favour the helicopter is because in the event of an accident, it is the only setup that will leave the fish with just the hook link. No other setup will do that. The fish has always got the potential to be trailing the line or something like that. So I do like helicopters for a variety of reasons, but I would say they're a little bit more specialised, and anti-tangle tubing and a lead clip is still my go-to and should be your go-to for the majority of angling situations. But that's the helicopter. Just to clarify again, stiff hook links, short hook links, short to middle distance, and it's a great little setup that I've used for many, many years now. So there you go, guys, the 3 definitive lead arrangements that are of interest to the carp angler. First of all, the lead clip, which, you know, with a piece of anti-tangle tubing and an anti-tangle sleeve, is going to suit any carp angling situation that you might come across, and set up correctly how I showed you is completely safe as well and can be used on any fishery in the UK without any issue. So the lead clip is your go-to general setup that will cover just about every eventuality, including zig rigs. After that, we've got the inline lead setup. Inline leads, I tend to box those off in my mind that inlines, solid bags. Nothing more complicated than that. That's that done and dusted again. Remember the safety elements and the 2 different ways that I talked about setting them up should you need to drop it off, or whether you want to fish it running. Drop off for weed, running without weed is a general good rule of thumb. And then lastly, we've got the helicopter setup, with a little bit more specialised, but again, just box that off in your minds. Helicopter rigs, generally stiff rigs. Generally short rigs, or short and stiff rigs. And that's about it. Again, I mean, helicopter rigs do have a merit if you're fishing in silt, because you can move the top bead up and fish your rig over the top of any silt or detritus on the bottom, but that's about it. It's not any more confusing than that. So keep it simple, but most importantly, guys, when it comes to lead arrangements, keep it safe. That is absolutely paramount. Thanks for watching.